Hello, friends. Welcome those who are here. We'll give it some time for people to show up. Hello, Metiko. Metiko, welcome. Robert, welcome. We're just giving some time for people to ramble on in, then we'll get started. Hello, Abby. I'm sure the two young ones are there as well. Rupa, welcome. Jayanta, welcome. Ah, there is Ivy May and Isla. Yeah. So we're just giving a few minutes for people to come in, and then we'll get started. Hello, Vivian. Welcome. And Jim, welcome. Ah, new friend. Always good to welcome new friends to the fold. Dragging people along to Dhammapalooza, taking them away from Monday Night Football. Has Monday Night Football started yet? Probably not. I think it's too early, I guess. I don't know. All right. I think we'll give it another minute, then we'll get started. Oh, very good. Well, the girls are always welcome. Hey, girls. All right. We're good to go, I think. So let's. Oh, it's Thanksgiving in Canada. Oh, happy Thanksgiving. Oh, I'm at the stable. Welcome. Let's share screen here. Where's the share? Present. That's interesting. All right. We're going to do our beginning chanting. We'll get started. Dhamma Niyamata Sutta. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Evang me sutang ekang samayang bhagava savattiyang viharati jetavane anata pindakas arame tatrako bhagava bhikkhu amante si bhikkhavoti badante tite bhikkhu bhagavato pachasso sun bhagava etadavocha. Upadava bhikkhave tathagathanang anupadava tathagathanang titava sadatu dhammatitata dhammaniyamata sabbe sankara anicca tang tathagato abhisambujjati abhisameti abhisambujjitva abhisametva chikkati deseti panyapeti pattapeti vivarati vibhajjati autthani karoti sabbe sankara anicchati. Upadava bhikkhave tathagathanang anupadava tathagathanang tithava sadatu dhammatitata dhammaniyamata sabbe sankara dukkha tang tathagato abhisambujjati abhisameti abhisambujjitva abhisametva chikkati deseti panyapeti pattapeti vivarati vibhajjati Uttani karoti sabbe sankara dukkhati Upadava bhikkhave tathagathanang anupadava tathagathanang Tithava sadatu dhammatitata dhammaniyamata sabbe dhammanatta Tang tathagato abhisambujjati abhisameti abhisambujjitva abhisametva achikkati deseti panyapeti pattapeti vivarati vibhajjati uttani karoti sabbe dhamma anattati idangavocca bhagavatamana te bhikkhu bhagavato basitung abhinhandunti. Now the English. Thus have I heard, on one occasion the Sublime One was living at Savatthi, at Jeta's Grove, in the park of Anathapindika. The Sublime One said to the bhikkhus, Bhikkhus. Yes, venerable sir, those bhikkhus replied. The Sublime One then said, Bhikkhus, whether Tathagatas appear or do not appear, there is this established element of Dhamma, this fixed law of Dhamma. All that is conditioned is impermanent. A Tathagata fully awakens to this and fully understands it. So awakening and thus understanding, he announces, points out, declares, establishes, expounds, explains, and clarifies it. All that is conditioned is impermanent. Because whether Tathagatas appear or do not appear, there is this established condition of Dhamma, this fixed law of Dhamma. All that is conditioned is unsatisfactory. A Tathagata fully awakens to this and fully understands it. So awakened and thus understanding, he announces, points out, declares, establishes, expounds, explains, and clarifies it. All that is conditioned is unsatisfactory. Because whether Tathagatas appear or do not appear, there is this established condition of Dhamma, this fixed law of Dhamma. All Dhammas are without self. A Tathagata fully awakens to this and fully understands it. So awakened and understanding, he announces, points out, declares, establishes, expounds, explains, and clarifies it. All Dhammas are without self. Thus spoke the Sublime One, delighted those bhikkhus rejoiced in the Sublime One had said. Sad. All right. Welcome, Douse and Steve. Okay, Fred. Oh, and John and Audrey, welcome. All right, friends. So it is Monday night, so we have another Dhammapalooza, our 2-hour festival of Dhamma with the Maggasekha community, where we do a variety of Dhamma-related activities, including doing some chanting, as we just did, some meditation later on, And in between, who knows? Maybe some answering questions, maybe some reading suttas, a wide range of possibilities, because this is a community guided event. So what that means is, over the next couple of minutes, if you have any topics you'd like me to talk about, if you have any questions you'd like me to answer, or if you have anything you'd like the community as a whole to discuss, you can put that in the chat and we can go from there. You're also welcome to talk to each other in the chat, say hello, talk Dhamma to each other. That's perfectly fine. That's not disrupting or disrespectful to me. This is the time for the community to come together and bond over the Dhamma. So if you have any comments, questions, or topics, now's the time to put them in the chat. And if there's nothing, there's always a sutta. We could do 2 suttas today, actually. I didn't do any advertisement at all. I didn't make any posts or anything. So every time I do that, it tends to be a much more smaller, intimate affair, Dhammapalooza. Whereas last week we broke 30. It's pretty good for Dhammapalooza. Hello, Jar. Welcome. Robert has a question. Can you go over what exactly Vitaka and Richara are and how to use them skillfully in meditation? These two are actually, it's not necessarily an easy question, because they're translated in different ways and they're understood in different ways. But these are like Vitaka most typically is understood to be something along the lines of applied thought, right? So applying your mind towards thinking. And then a vichara is like sustained thought, continuing the thought, going over and over. And this is something that is a normal part of our mind, and as we're going along through the day, we have Vitaka Vichara. And when you get into the first jhanas, you still have Vitaka Vichara. So the first jhana is not completely silent. There is applied thought and sustained thought. But by the second one, they're gone because they're too gross. Gross as opposed to subtle. Right? Jhana, going deeper in the jhanas is going in ever subtle mind states. So Vitaka and Vichara are qualities, actions of the mind that are there. And as you go deeper into jhana, they disappear. How to use them skillfully in meditation. Don't attach to any thought that arises. Or if you're using thought, like doing some kind of a contemplation, like Buddha Nusati or Sila Nusati or whatever, you can use that for that. Steve says, I've been out of touch for a few days, Bhante. Where are you now? Yeah, this used to be a question that was asked a lot more the last couple of years. I've been a bit more stable the last year, being in a very similar, one place. I was at Empty Cloud for 5 months. Now I'm with family for 2 weeks, and then I go back to Empty Cloud for a week, and then I go to Australia. So This Dhammapalooza and the next Dhammapalooza will be the last Dhammapaloozas until December, because I can't do any streams while I'm going to be at Empty Cloud. Well, I'll probably be doing their streams, but I'm only bringing what I'm going to take on the plane with me. So I'm not bringing my computer and my streaming equipment and all that stuff. So this week and then next week and then after that, Maggasekha YouTube has a hiatus. Hello, Jared says, yes, new to your group. Yep, certainly. That's not a name I'm not familiar with, so welcome. Abby, Isla and Ivy May have been talking about my deceased grandfather multiple times and quite frequently. Yeah. Yeah. Is this okay to encourage her and ask her questions about what they are seeing, feeling? Certainly. Certainly. This is they're young, and maybe this is the first experience they're having of somebody they knew not being there anymore. So obviously they're going to have lots of questions. That's going to be normal. Right? They're just young beings just starting to try to figure out what's going on in the world. So this is a good thing that they ask questions, because they want to know. Your grandfather, so their great grandfather. I'm trying to think if my great grandmother, I think, died before my grandfather, but not too many years before that. When my grandfather died, when I was like, my first grandfather died, when I was like 9. So, yeah. If they have questions, they want to talk about it, of course. This is an important thing. They were present when he passed away. Oh, very good. Very good. That's a wonderful thing for a child to see. And I know, like, in modern West, people will be like, "Why? That sounds morbid." They keep kids away from funerals. They keep it. That's not good. It's not good. Most of human history, kids saw that their loved ones, their grandparents die and things like that, and we're part of the process, the communal process of preparation and grieving and all that kind of stuff. It's good. Steve asks, where in Australia? Everywhere. I have 4 flights in Australia, not counting the flights to and from Australia. Australia is almost as big as America. East to west coast in America is 5.5 hours. I'm going to be on the East Coast, on the West Coast, in the middle South. I'm not going to be in the middle North. That's a place I'm not going to be. But East, West, and Middle South. Metastable. When is the mind sense gone? WRT Jonas? I don't know what WRT means. I can infer the question, obviously. Second jhana. Are the first 5 senses gone by the first jhana? I understand weak samadhi can result in sense penetration, but what about in case of strong samadhi? This is a highly debated. This is a very highly debated topic. Right? Very highly debated topic. The Buddha does not really mention in the suttas the senses in the jhanic formulation. He mentions things like piti sukha. And in the fourth jhana, he mentions, um, no like and dislike, no pleasure and pain. But he doesn't mention one way or the other that the senses disappear or anything like that. At least not that I know of. There might be some obscure sutta that maybe mentions that. The suttas are pretty big. um, but nothing comes to my mind in that regard. So this is why you have this debate. Well, are you totally locked off from all your senses in jhana, or you have all your senses in jhana? Which one? Yeah. So the kids are seeing their great grandfather. Yeah, who knows? Kids can be kind of open to those kind of things. With respect, metta is stable. I don't know. Oh, WRT with respect to. Okay, gotcha. How to deal with rules you don't find too useful, aka if some rule is in a practice for something that you don't struggle with, why keep it up? I tend to heavily avoid doing what I don't find practical. Hmm. If it's something related to being in community, then you do it for the community. If it's just something that, the average Buddhist does, but that you kind of don't feel like you need to do, if you've investigated that and questioned that and see that, it's not something I feel important, um, and then give it a try. Let it go. See if it works. See if it helps. See if it makes things worse. And you need to go back to it. I tend to heavily avoid doing what I don't find practical. Yeah, I have a pretty strong streak of that as well. Or at least useful, pragmatic, right? Pragmatic, practical. Sometimes you just have to do things for community harmony and to, for because that's what the group that you are with is doing. Jim says, "Will you be in Melbourne?" Yes, Newbury Monastery. So Newbury is. I'm going to be staying there a couple days. All right. I don't see any other questions or much chat. Maybe we can go to a sutta. I'll give the chat box another minute or so to catch up, just in case. Metastable says there a comprehensive book or collected essays that you can recommend for focused reading on the Brahma Viharas in ways that can be placed into practice. Hmm. Hmm. I don't know. Nothing comes to mind. I mean, Bante G a couple years ago put out Metta in plain English. That might be a pretty good compendium for Metta in terms of the suttas. I've not read it, um, but other than that, nothing really comes to mind. Maybe in one of the old um, wheel publications. I think Bante Analio also has some talks on it and some things on it. What are some options? Gregory says, what are some options for those who want to pursue jhana practice but are not finding breath meditation productive? Satipatthana, satipatthana, satipatthana. Practice satipatthana, mindfulness of foundations of mindfulness. Practice that. There's a sutta, a little sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya where the Buddha says, to subdue the hindrances, practice satipatthana. Right? The very beginning of the stock phrase of jhanas is quite secluded from sensual pleasure, secluded from unwholesome states. That's the hindrances. So the Buddha says quite clearly, you practice satipatthana to subdue the hindrances. And I've experienced this in my own practice directly. So I highly suggest this. If you, because I'm not really that great at the sit and follow your breath and sit perfectly like a rock for an hour. That's never been me. Um, but satipatthana is another way of getting you there. What I would also say is don't abandon anapanasati. Don't abandon mindfulness of breathing. Still do it, but also practice satipatthana. They look fuzzy over the live stream. Really? Is that the case for anybody else? Even if you like zoom in? Uh yeah, I guess they are a little bit, but it's definitely not 100% clear. Readable, but yeah, I can see a little bit of a fuzziness. At least that's what it looks like on my screen anyway. All right, here's the link. Shorter discourse with Malunkya Putta. Malunkya. Steve says England is a long way away. Yeah, not as quite as long a way away as Australia with 23 hours of flying. But yeah, England is a ways away. So I have heard. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, or Anathapindika's monastery. There, the venerable Malunkya was in private retreat. This thought came to his mind. There are several convictions that the Buddha has left undeclared. he has set them aside and refused to comment on them. For example, the cosmos is eternal or not eternal, or finite or infinite. The soul and the body are the same thing, or they are different things. After death, I realize one exists or doesn't exist, or both exist and doesn't exist, or neither exists nor doesn't exist. The Buddha does not give me a straight answer on these points. I don't like that, and I do not accept it. I will go to him and ask him about this. These kind of things never end quite well for the person. when they it's like, hey, well, I don't accept what the Buddha is saying. I want a straight answer from the Buddha instead of him not telling us about whether the universe is finite or infinite. If he gives me a straight answer on any of these points, I will lead the spiritual life under him, so become a monastic. If he does not give me a straight answer on any of these points, I shall resign the training and return to a lesser life. Then in the late afternoon, Malunkya came out of retreat and went to the Buddha. He sat down to one side. He bowed, sat down to one side, and told the Buddha of his thoughts. He then continued. If the Buddha knows that the cosmos is eternal, please tell me. If you know the cosmos is not eternal, please tell me. If you don't know whether the cosmos is eternal or not, then it is straightforward to simply say, I neither know nor see. If you know that the world is infinite or infinite, that the soul and the body are the same thing, or they are different things, that after death I realize one exists or doesn't exist, or both exists and doesn't exist, or neither exists nor doesn't exist, please tell me. If you don't know any of these things, then it's straightforward to simply say, I neither know nor see. Yeah, I don't know why the suttas are fuzzy, but thank you for bringing that to my attention. Jara, I see your question and I'll answer it at the end of the sutta. So the Buddha says, what? Malunkya Putta. Did I ever say to you, come Malunkya Putta, lead the spiritual life under me, and I will declare these things to you. The Buddha's coming in hard right off the bat. Did I ever tell you that if you became a monk that I'd tell you these things? No, sir. Or did you, and now the Buddha says, or did you ever say to me, sir, I will lead the spiritual life under the Buddha, and the Buddha will declare these things to me? No, sir. So it seems that I did not say to you, come, Malunkya Putta, lead the spiritual life under me, and I will declare these things to you. So this is just to have a clarification. You can see the evolution of the ordination process in the suttas and in the Vinaya. In the beginning, somebody says, like in the older suttas, the earlier times, chronologically, somebody will say, I wish to lead the holy life under you. And so the way the ordination is, come, monk. Literally, that's it. That's the whole ordination in the early days. Buddha just says, come. And you go, and then you're a monastic. So come, and did I ever say to you, come, Malunkya Putta, lead the spiritual life under me, and I will declare these things? And you never said, okay, in that case, you silly man, are you really in a position to be abandoning anything? This Pali word here, mogha purisa, a stupid or useless person. Obviously, Bhikkhu Bhante Sujato is making it nice and kind. You silly man. The Buddha goes straight up to a stupid or useless person. Douse says on PC it's absolutely fine for me. Yeah, but I can see, Douse, when I go to full screen, I can see that there is a bit of a fuzziness. Um, Even on my end, I can see it when I go full screen, the shared thing. So it's a good thing to know, and I'll try to remember to post the link in the future. And if I don't, then please remind me. All right. Suppose someone were to say this: I will not lead the spiritual life under the Buddha until the Buddha declares to me that the cosmos is eternal, or that the cosmos is not eternal, or that after death the realized one neither exists nor doesn't exist. That would still remain undeclared by the realized one. And meanwhile, that person would die. That's great, right? The Buddha's like, you can ask forever if you want. You're just not going to get an answer. You're just going to basically, die. Now, here's a great simile. This is a powerful, wonderful simile. Suppose a man was struck by an arrow thickly smeared with poison. His friends and colleagues, relatives and kin, would get a field surgeon to treat him. But the man would say, I won't pull out this arrow as long as I don't know whether the man who wounded me was an aristocrat, a Brahmin, a merchant, or a worker. So the four castes. So he wants to know the caste of the person who shot him. He'd say, I won't pull out this arrow as long as I don't know the following things about the man who wounded me: his name and clan, whether he's tall, short, or medium, whether his skin is black, brown, or tawny, and what village, town, or city he comes from. I won't pull out this arrow as long as I don't know whether the bow that wounded me is made of wood or cane, whether the bowstring is made of swallowwort fiber, sun hemp fiber, sinew, sansevieria fiber, or spurge fiber, whether the shaft is made from a bush or a plantation tree, whether the shaft was fitted with feathers from a vulture, a heron, a hawk, a peacock, or a stork, whether the shaft was bound with sinews of a cow, a buffalo, a swamp deer, or a gibbon, and whether the arrowhead was spiked, razor tipped, barbed, made from iron calf's tooth, or lancet shape. That man would still not have learned these things, and meanwhile, they'd die. In the same way, suppose someone were to say, I will not leave the spiritual life under the Buddha until the Buddha declares to me that the cosmos is eternal, or that it is not eternal, that after death the realized one neither exists nor doesn't exist. That would still remain undeclared by the realized one, and meanwhile the person would die. It's not true that if there were the view the cosmos is eternal, there would be the living of the spiritual life. It's not true that if there were the view the cosmos is not eternal, there would be the living of the spiritual life. When there is the view that the cosmos is eternal or that the cosmos is not eternal, there is rebirth, there is old age, there is death, there is sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and distress. And it is the defeat of these things in this very life that I advocate. It's not true that if there were the view, the world is finite or infinite. The soul and the body are the same thing or different things. Or realize one exists or does not exist after death. Or realize one both exists and doesn't exist, or neither exists nor doesn't exist. After death, there would be the living of the spiritual life. When there are any of these views, there is rebirth, there is old age, there is death, there is sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. And it is the defeat of these things in this very life that I advocate. So, Malunkya, you should remember what I have not declared is undeclared, and what I have declared is declared. And what have I not declared? I have not declared the following: The cosmos is eternal, not eternal. The world is finite or infinite. The soul and the body are the same or different things. A realized one exists or doesn't exist after death, or both exists and doesn't exist, or neither exists nor doesn't exist after death. And why haven't I declared these things? Because they aren't beneficial or relevant to the fundamentals of the spiritual life. They don't lead to disillusionment, dispassion, cessation, peace, insight, awakening, and extinguishment. That's why I haven't declared them. And what have I declared? I've declared the following. This is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering. This is the practice that leads to the cessation of suffering. And why have I declared these things? Because they are beneficial and relevant to the fundamentals of the spiritual life. They lead to disillusionment, dispassion, cessation, peace, insight, awakening, and extinguishment. That's why I haven't declared them. I have declared them. So, Malunkya, you should remember what I have not declared as undeclared, and what I have declared as declared. That is what the Buddha said. Satisfied, Venerable Malunkya was happy with what the Buddha said. All right. So we see here that even though our kind of intellectual or inquisitive mind wants to know these kind of grand questions, the Buddha doesn't indulge those questions. And he tells you straight up why. They don't help in becoming awakened. They don't help in lessening your greed, hatred, and delusion. They don't help in letting go of your suffering. They're just kind of inquisitive, intellectualizing, and wanting to know of something that really doesn't matter much in your life. The Buddha is pointing towards the Four Noble Truths and putting the practice into practice. Happy Thanksgiving in Canada. Multiple Canadian friends enjoying Thanksgiving. Even though it's not Dhamma, if one of you wants to give me a paragraph, tell me what Thanksgiving in Canada is about and what it's like. And but I'll go to questions here. Jer, also Jer, or Jair, tell me how your name is pronounced, so I know it. If I pronounce anybody's name wrong, please tell me. I like to practice with names that my tongue is not familiar with. What recommendations do you have to find community? Any web pages or groups that you recommend to help find local live communities? Yeah, meetup.com is one of those good ones. There's also, let me get this here. There's also the World Buddhist Directory on a very good basic Buddhist website called buddhanet.net, a website that I used very often in my early days of learning Buddhism. Air with a J. Very good. Jer. All right. So you can go to that link. Now, this World Buddhist Directory is not always accurate. Sometimes a place might be shut down, or it might not always be updated to a year or two. Depends. But Dhamma learner has. You're starting to type a question. I guess you have one. Um, Good evening, Bhante. In a previous video, when at Bhavana, you were discussing non-self, and so this must be my most viral video. I don't know why the YouTube algorithm picked up on it, but if you type in anatta in YouTube, my video comes up on the first page, even up with like the Dalai Lama and things like that, which is quite interesting. But it only with that one video and only on that one topic. Everything else, I'm like buried like 10 pages down usually. But yeah, so that's an interesting video. Um, Back from the Q&A days when I was at Bhavana, as you say. You would tell yourself not to follow a thought that arose in your. Oh, where's the rest of the question? Here we go. In your mind. Would you consider that talking to yourself a thought? I am confused as to a thought I produce as opposed to watching thoughts as an observer. Thank you. Let's see. How to explain this? So to clarify what was saying in there in terms of anatta was that because of my previous insights into anatta, by that point, I was able to reflect. Like if a thought arose, it's like, well, I don't have to accept this thought. I don't have to identify with it. I can let it go. I don't have to attach it. It's not really thinking about it per se. It's just an acknowledgement, right? And is that a different level of verbalization or visualization or choice making? Maybe. But it was more an activity, right? It arose and I say, well, I don't need to accept this. And moreover, I don't want to feed it. Let me starve it. I'm confused as to a thought I produce as opposed to watching thoughts as an observer. Yeah, well, there is thinking that is an active choice, and there is thinking that is karma, right? The random thoughts that come into the mind. Or maybe not so random. I mean, they are according to causes and conditions, but we often just can't see those causes and conditions. They're very subtle, and often they go back quite far. So don't try to intellectually wrap yourself up in knots. Just understand that this has arisen in my mind and choose not to attach to it. As Robert says, it's similar to American Thanksgiving, but what's the point? Like, what's the story behind it? I'd like to know. Oh, here we go. Julie has it. Oh, so it is a similar thing. It's a harvest thing. Oh, it makes sense. In the old days, a harvest that was really good meant you didn't die. So that was worth celebrating. For certain. Although with things going on in the world, there's going to be unfortunately, lots of deaths and famine coming in the next couple of years. We're going into a tough time, and the Dhamma will be very important. All right. Oh, a lot of people talking about Thanksgiving. Lots of mind movements going on within the mind. Yes, of course. Bhante Silananda would say, mind is the fastest energy. Mind moves very, very fast. And in multiple places in the suttas, the Buddha says, well, if you were to take something as self, it's better to take the body as self because the body is seen to be somewhat stable over time, but the mind is always changing, always unstable, so quickly moving from one thing to the next. Reminder to say thank you. Yeah, my the retreat I'm going to be doing in December after I come back from Australia is actually generosity, goodwill, and gratitude. So it's kind of like my Thanksgiving/Christmas retreat, covering those three things: dana, metta, and katanyuta. So it should be a very kind of wholesome, warm-hearted, fun retreat. All right. And there hasn't been a retreat, I think, since beginning of August, maybe, was the last retreat I did. Julie says, is it a live retreat and or virtual that you are doing, Bante? It's gonna be on Zoom. I have no place to do in-person retreats. If an organization or somebody wanted to host me to do an in-person retreat, that's one thing. But I have no in-person retreat facility. So for quite a number of years to come, my retreats will most likely be virtual. The ones that I personally host for myself, for Maggasekha. All right. Yeah, well, when I'm not in a monastery, like when I'm able to do my full set of activities, then I try to do a retreat once a month. I think I've done 4 or 5 this year so far. Something like that. And they're going to be just like most places, like Bhavana Society has, like every year there's a metta retreat. Every year there's a jhana retreat. Every year there's a this retreat, a that retreat. They're going to be like, every year I'm going to do one, the same like retreats for the most part. Maybe I'll add in a new one. Like I'll have one that's kind of like brand new, or one that I haven't done in a while. And but there's going to be a metta retreat and a mindfulness of death retreat and all like the normal basics. All right. So why don't we read another sutta, and then we'll do our meditation, and then we'll close out. Family obligations seem to hinder my practice. Maybe. Or maybe you're hindering your practice because of agitation related to family obligations. There is a wonderful quote. There is a wonderful thing from Ajahn Chah. Um, and I forgot what the story exactly was, but there was lots of noises of something. Maybe it was bugs. I don't remember. But Ajahn Chah, Vivian, you asked a question? Let me see. Okay, I'll check it out. All right. Thank you for saying that, because I wouldn't have seen it. Um, oh, Douse, you caught you got to yeah. But anyway, so then Ajahn Chah says, "Well, is the sound bothering you, or are you bothering the sound?" That's a thing to contemplate. I did for a couple of years before I had an experience where I realized, oh no, it's me bothering the sound. Right? So when I'm home with family, I'm a monk. And I when I spend time with my parents, it's usually they're watching TV. So there's like the Hallmark channel going on and things like that. But it's like I'm not caring about what's on the Hallmark channel. I'm there to be with my parents, right? Just to kind of be a presence for them, for me to be there. Right? So I could be like, oh no, I'm a monk. These things are gonna ruin my practice. Like go on this like agitation bender. Or I can realize, well, it is what it is. Like when I was on the plane, when I went to California, um, when I went to California for the bhikkhuni ordination a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and in front the little tablet in front of my seat, I just turn off because I don't need it. I'm not watching the newest movie or whatever. But I could see right in my view, like you can see between the seats, the person on the angled at you, and I see the person's watching the new Top Gun. And I loved the first Top Gun when I was a kid. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. My whole youth, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. So I was like, oh, the new Top Gun. And I was like, oh boy. And so I was like, I'm just doing my thing, doing my thing. And my mom wants to look at the new Top Gun. And I was like, nah, you don't need to watch it. What are you going to do? Right? So like when you're kind of out in the world, there's lots of things that will ruin your practice. But really, they're not. They kind of are the practice in a way. Right? It's the mindset and how to handle them, manage them, deal with them. That's the important thing. Right? Is this bothering me, or am I bothering it? It's a good question to ask. Dharma learner says sounds more like Zen. Yeah, it does sound like a Zen koan, doesn't it? But Ajahn Chah is directly on point with it. He's directly on point with that. I needed to hear that, and I needed to have that in my mind for a couple of years before it worked. Vivian says, during meditation, if I feel my hands disappearing, does that mean I should return to the breath? This is something that can happen. Just stay on the breath. Right? You're feeling to your body the kind of disappearing, and I don't mean like falling asleep. Like literally, just kind of like your mind almost like shutting down the neurons to parts of your body so that they just don't feel like they're there. That can happen. Right? That's a fairly common thing. It's even happened to me a couple times. It hasn't for a number of years, but I vividly remember like my hands basically disappearing from my senses. It's like, oh, my hands are not here. I can't feel them. What's going on? So this is something that's okay. It's common. It's not anything bad. It's just something to understand, and not to get too excited about or distracted because of it. Keep following the breath. Jay Collis says Ajahn Chah seems to have used a lot of Zen-like language. I think he was influenced by some quotes, even. Yeah, a little bit. Not much. I don't know if that I would say a lot. He does have that kind of, I don't know, that kind of like, I don't know what I would say. Not even esotericism, because he's not. He's pretty straightforward. I mean, it sounds like, is the sound bothering you or are you bothering the sound? Sounds like a Zen koan, but it's not really. It's a line of investigation. I mean, I guess that's what a Zen koan is too. I mean, I know a little bit of it. I had a friend for a couple years who was a big Korean Zen practitioner, and he gave me a koan or two, and I, I I fiddled with it for a little while, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't. This is not me. I'm not bothering with this stuff. I'll just let it be and go and practice my way." Ah, very good, Des. Jay Kala, he would use kind of shocking quotes. Yeah, Ajahn Chah was a troll. He was a button pusher. That's one of the great qualities of Ajahn Chah. At least I think so, because I'm also a troll and a button pusher. There is a part of me that feels sorry for for monastics who will want to ordain under me in the future, because they are going to get somewhat of an Ajahn Chah treatment. Although I don't know that I would, I'd probably be a bit more reserved about it, at least until I'm much, much more wiser. Because you have to be wise when doing that kind of stuff. You can't just willy nilly do it. Dharma Loner makes a great quote here. My thanks to others for their additional information. I'm new. I didn't realize how others chip in. This is the Maggasekha community. Thank you, friends, for doing this. Very good. That's the way it should be. Helping each other out. Yeah, I mean, this is why you need wisdom to know who you can do it. Like, just like the Buddha had wisdom to tailor his teaching and what he said to different people depending on their causes and conditions. Like, you have to kind of have that quality to be able to do that. Let's see. 9:06. Why don't we do our meditation now? And then we'll have some time afterwards, maybe about 20 minutes afterwards or so, to do some reading, some Dhammapada reading, and to close out. And there goes Douse right on cue. Thank you, as always, my friend, for coming on here, even though it's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. It's always good to see you, and appreciate your uh, what you post and support when people are asking questions. Well done. Have a good night. All right, friends. So let's set your body up in whatever stable and comfortable position works for you. We'll spend a little time scanning through the body, starting with the feet, moving up to the head. Start by bringing your focus and attention to the feet. By focus and attention, this means to focus in on whatever feeling or sensation is found at the feet, such as the feeling of the feet pressing against the floor or the cushion, etc. Move up through the ankles to the calves. Up through the knees and into the thighs. What is the feeling of the thighs pressing against the chair, the cushion? As you're scanning, if you have trouble connecting with a sensation or feeling in that part of the body, you can prompt yourself by asking, what do I see? What do I feel? And usually some sensation will arise in your awareness. Up through to the hips and pelvis. The hips and pelvis are an important part of your posture, especially if you're sitting on a cushion. Pay attention to how the position of the pelvis impacts both the legs and the spine. When you're ready, move up the spine through the abdomen and the chest. Observing how the position of the spine impacts your posture. Check that the shoulders are hanging loosely, not scrunched up and tight. And then down through to the elbows and hands. Observe how their position also impacts your posture. Finally, up to the head. Checking that the chin is parallel to the floor. The head's not leaning and slouching here or there. When you're done setting up your body in a stable and comfortable position, let the body go and take 3 deep breaths. And then let the breath go. From here on in, try not to manipulate or control the breath in any way. This body has been breathing from the moment you were born and will continue to do so until the second you die. It doesn't need you to do its job. Your job is to simply observe, investigate, and abide with the breath. Watch as the body breathes in, watch as it breathes out. As you're following your breath, your mind will become bored and will seek to run away to the past or the future, across the world, or an external distraction like a sound will arise. Your mind will chase after it. Whenever you're taken away from the breath, after a time it will start to dawn on you that you've been taken away. At that point, fully acknowledge you've been taken away from the breath and try to come back to full mindfulness. Then practice letting go of the distraction by neither getting attached to it and excited or getting agitated and trying to push it away. Simply try to let it go. Give it no attention, no energy, no focus. Let it be and let it go on its way. And then return to the breath. Whenever you're taken away, acknowledge, let go, and return. Acknowledge, let go, and return. Always come back to the breath. Breath is home. It's always there, ready for us to return to it and follow it down. Develop a mind of peace and tranquility. Acknowledge, let go, and return. Acknowledge, let go, and return. Don't get wrapped up in the distractions and the stories and narratives and thoughts. Do your best to let them be and return to the breath. Every once in a while, as you're following your breath, check in with the state of your mind. Is your mind becoming more tranquil and calm or not? As your mind becomes more tranquil and calm, you may begin to notice more subtle characteristics of the mind, subtle characteristics of the breath that you didn't see before. Sometimes the breath is long and deep, sometimes short and shallow. See if you can do your best to follow the breath. See how it's changing. See impermanence. Observe how it's changing. Slowly start to open your eyes. Become aware of the room around you. Reflect on how your mind has changed from before the meditation to after. And it's always good to contemplate and reflect on the experiences you had during the meditation. Struggles and triumphs and insights, etc. Hello, Malika, my friend from down under. So we have about 20 minutes left. I think we can, unless there's any questions or anything like that, I think we can read a sutta. Still with Malunkya Putta. But the last one we did the shorter, and this one we did the longer. Just because they say short and long, Chula and Maha, doesn't necessarily mean that one is shorter than the other. Sometimes the shorter one is the longer one. The longer discourse with Malunkya. So I have heard, at one time the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's grove, Anathapindika's monastery. There the Buddha addressed the mendicants. Mendicants, Venerable Sir, they replied. The Buddha said this, Mendicants, do you remember the 5 lower fetters that I taught? When he said this, Venerable Malunkya said to him, Sir, I remember them. But how do you remember them? The Buddha asked. I remember the lower fetters taught by the Buddha as follows. Identity view, doubt, misapprehension of precepts and observances, sensual desire, and ill will. That's how I remember the 5 lower fetters taught by the Buddha. Who on earth do you remember being taught the 5 lower fetters in that way? Wouldn't the wanderers who follow other paths fault you using the simile of the infant? For a little baby doesn't even have a concept of identity. So how could identity view possibly arise in them? Yet the underlying tendency to identity view still lies within them. A little baby doesn't even have the concept of teachings. So how could doubt about the teachings possibly arise in them? Yet the underlying tendency to doubt still lies within them. A little baby doesn't even have the concept of precepts. So how could misapprehension of precepts and observances possibly arise in them? Yet the underlying tendency to misapprehension of precepts and observances still lies within them. A little baby doesn't even have a concept of sensual pleasures. So how could desire for sensual pleasures possibly arise in them? Yet the underlying tendency to sensual pleasures still lies within them. A little baby doesn't even have a concept of sentient beings. So how could ill will for sentient beings possibly arise in them? Yet the underlying tendency to ill will still lies within them. Wouldn't the wanderers who follow other paths fault you using the simile of the infant? When he said this, Venerable Ananda said to the Buddha, Now is the time, Blessed One, now is the time, Holy One. May the Buddha teach the 5 lower fetters. The mendicants will listen and remember it. Well then, Ananda, listen and pay close attention. I will speak. Yes, sir, Ananda replied. The Buddha said this, Ananda, take an uneducated ordinary person who has not seen the noble ones and is neither skilled nor trained in the teaching of the noble ones. They've not seen good persons and are neither skilled nor trained in the teaching of good persons. Their heart is overcome and mired in identity view, and they don't truly understand the escape from identity view that has arisen. That identity view is reinforced in them, not eliminated. It is a lower fetter. Their heart is overcome and mired in doubt, and they don't truly understand the escape from doubt that has arisen. That doubt is reinforced in them, not eliminated. It is a lower fetter. Their heart is overcome and mired in misapprehension of precepts and observances, and they don't truly understand the escape from misapprehension of precepts and observances that has arisen. That misapprehension of precepts and observances is reinforced in them, not eliminated. It is in lower fetter. Their heart is overcome and mired in sensual desire, and they don't truly understand the escape from sensual desire that has arisen. That sensual desire is reinforced in them, not eliminated. It is a lower fetter. Their heart is overcome and mired in ill will, and they don't truly understand the escape from ill will that has arisen. That ill will is reinforced in them, not eliminated. It is a lower fetter. But an educated, noble disciple has seen the noble ones and is skilled and trained in the teaching of the noble ones. They've seen good persons and are skilled and trained in the teaching of good persons. Their heart is not overcome and mired in identity view, and they truly understand the escape from identity view that has arisen. That identity view, along with any underlying tendency to it, is given up in them. Their heart is not overcome and mired in doubt, and they truly understand the escape from doubt that has arisen. That doubt, along with any underlying tendency to it, is given up in them. Their heart is not overcome and mired in misapprehension of precepts and observances, and they truly understand the escape from misapprehension of precepts and observances that has arisen. That misapprehension of precepts and observances, along with any underlying tendency to it, is given up in them. Their heart is not overcome and mired in sensual desire, and they truly understand the escape from sensual desire that has arisen. That sensual desire, along with any underlying tendency to it, is given up. Their heart is not overcome and mired in ill will, and they truly understand the escape from ill will that has arisen. That ill will, along with any underlying tendency to it, is given up in them. There is a path and a practice for giving up the 5 lower fetters. It's not possible to know or see or give up the 5 lower fetters without relying on that path and that practice. Suppose there was a large tree standing with heartwood. It's not possible to cut out the heartwood without having cut through the bark and the softwood. In the same way, there is a path and a practice for giving up the 5 lower fetters. It's not possible to know or see or give up the 5 lower fetters without relying on that path and that practice. There is a path and a practice for giving up the 5 lower fetters. It is possible to know and see and give up the 5 lower fetters by relying on that path and that practice. Suppose there was a large tree standing with heartwood. It is possible to cut out the heartwood after having cut through the bark and the softwood. In the same way, there is a path and a practice for giving up the 5 lower fetters. It is possible to know and see and give up the 5 lower fetters by relying on that path and that practice. Suppose the river Ganges was full to the brim so a crow could drink from it. Then along comes a feeble person who thinks, by swimming with my arms, I'll safely cross over to the far shore of the Ganges. But they're not able to do so. In the same way, when the Dhamma is being taught for the cessation of identity view, someone whose mind isn't eager, confident, settled, and decided should be regarded as being like that feeble person. Suppose the river Ganges was full to the brim so a crow could drink from it. Then along comes a strong person who thinks, by swimming with my arms, I'll safely cross over to the far shore of the Ganges. And they are able to do so. In the same way, when the Dhamma is being taught for the cessation of identity view, someone whose mind is eager, confident, settled, and decided should be regarded as a being like that strong person. And what Ananda is the path and practice for giving up the 5 lower fetters. It's when a mendicant, due to seclusion from attachments, the giving up of unskillful qualities, and the complete settling of physical discomfort, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unskillful qualities, enters and remains in the first jhana, which has the rapture and bliss born of seclusion, while placing the mind and keeping it connected. They contemplate the phenomena there, including in form, feeling, perception, choices, and consciousness, as impermanent, as suffering, as diseased, as a boil, as a dart, as misery, as an affliction, as alien, as falling apart, as empty, as not self. They turn their mind away from those things and apply it to the deathless element. This is peaceful. This is sublime. That is, the stilling of all activities, the letting go of all attachments, the ending of craving, cessation, extinguishment. Abiding in that, they attain the ending of defilements. If they don't attain the ending of defilements, with the ending of the 5 lower fetters, they're reborn spontaneously because of their passion and love for that meditation. They are extinguished there and are not liable to return from that world. This is the path and practice for giving up the 5 lower fetters. Furthermore, as the placing of the mind and keeping it connected are stilled, a mendicant enters and remains in the 2nd jhana, the 3rd jhana, the 4th jhana. They contemplate the phenomena there as impermanent. They turn their mind away from those things. If they don't attain the ending of the defilements, they are reborn spontaneously and are not liable to return from that world. This too is the path and practice for giving up the 5 lower fetters. Furthermore, a mendicant going totally beyond perceptions of form, with the ending of perceptions of impingement, not focusing on perceptions of diversity, are aware that space is infinite, enters and remains in the dimension of infinite space. They contemplate their phenomena as impermanent. They turn their mind away from those things. If they don't attain the ending of defilements, they're reborn spontaneously and are not liable to return from that world. This too is a path and the practice for giving up the 5 lower fetters. Furthermore, a mendicant, totally going beyond the dimension of infinite space, aware that consciousness is infinite, enters and remains in the dimension of infinite consciousness. They contemplate the phenomena there as impermanent. They turn away. And if they don't reach the end of the defilements, they're reborn spontaneously. Furthermore, a mendicant going totally beyond the dimension of infinite consciousness, aware that there is nothing at all, enters and remains in the dimension of nothingness. They contemplate the phenomena there as impermanent. They turn away from those things. If they don't attain the ending of defilements, they're reborn spontaneously. Sir, this too is a path and practice for giving up the 5 lower fetters. Sir, if this is the path and the practice for giving up 5 lower fetters, how come some mendicants here are released in heart while others are released in wisdom? In that case, I say it is the diversity of their faculties. That is what the Buddha said. Satisfied, Venerable Ananda was happy with what the Buddha said. All right, friends. Malik asked, "Did you go to the ordination of Udani, a Sri Lankan?" No, I don't. I don't know of this ordination. I think that this is good for us to end. I'm getting a little tired, and we're almost to the end, so I think this is a good place to call it a night. So let's do our final business. So, friends, every Monday, almost every Monday, because I'm going to be gone for a month and a week. So, but usually when I'm around, Monday nights, 8 p.m. New York time, Dhammapalooza. And if you would like to find out more from me, follow my all the things that I do, from retreats YouTube videos, articles, etc., you can go to the website scrolling on the bottom, maggasekha.org, Maggasekha. Maggasekha means student of the path. You can go to that website, and the top right, you can put your email in there, and anytime I come out with a new video, a new article, a new retreat, etc., you'll get a notification. You can also click the subscribe and click the bell for on YouTube, and then every time a new video comes out or a stream is starting or will be starting, you'll get a notification, you'll get an email. So these are ways to keep in touch with everything going on Maggasekha. We also have an online community on a program called Discord. This is a community that comes together in study and practice of the early Buddhist texts, the suttas. So if that sounds interesting, you can send an email to the email below and request an invite, and then you can join. All right, so why don't we do our sharing of merits? If I can find it, there it is. Dukkha patta chani dukkha, bhaya patta chani bhaya, soka patta chani soka, hantu sabbe pipaniyo, etta vata cha amehi, sampadang punya sampadang, sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya, akasatta chabumata deva naga mahiddika punyang tang anumoditva charang rakantu sasanam. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit of ours that we've thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share in this dispensation of ours. Share in this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddhist dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, friends. Until next time, Suki Hotu, may you be happy, practice well, and be well. May you have a spiritually successful and peaceful practice until we meet again. See you next week for the final Dhammapalooza for a month and a week. So, until next time, have a good week.